Hey, good morning, everybody. Josh here. Welcome back to our morning meditations, where we are just getting into what's going to be a pretty lengthy study on the parables. Now, there's about 40 parables throughout the scriptures, and we're going to just take them one by one. We might group some together because of how similar they are. Maybe there's a common thread that runs between two or three of them and they're kind of lumped together. And for the most part, we're going to go in chronological order. And what I mean by that is just the way that they appear throughout the Gospels. Now, there's some parables that appear in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And there's some that appear in all of them. And then there's specific parables that are just specific to Mark or Matthew or Luke, but they don't appear in some of the other Gospels. So I'm going to do my best to simplify everything and just keep us on track. But just as a reminder, kind of what we talked about yesterday, it's important for us to know what a parable is and what it isn't. And so a parable is the way that Jesus uses the parables is sort of like a riddle in a sense. They're designed to knock people off their balance a little bit. And what I mean by that is to get people thinking in a different way, in a non-traditional way. Because if you think about it, the way that we normally think about things is kind of restrictive. We don't see outside of our normal way of seeing because that would be abnormal. And that's what Jesus is suggesting with the parables is a new way of seeing, a new way of thinking. And so what I want to do is I'm just going to pick one at random for right now and talk about one that's a little bit more difficult to understand, which is found in Matthew 25, and it's the parable of the 10 bridesmaids. And there's 5 wise ones and there's 5 unwise ones. And so the parable goes, in a nutshell, that there's 10 bridesmaids and they're waiting for the arrival of the bridegroom. And 5 of the bridesmaids, the wise ones, they remembered to bring extra oil for their lamps to keep their lamps burning. And the other 5 don't. And so when it comes time later in the evening, at night, for the bridegroom to arrive, there's only 5 that have their lamps burning, and they're able to meet the bridegroom, and the other 5 who forgot the oil don't have any. And so they're unable to get to where they need to be to meet the bridegroom and do this whole thing. But before that all happens, they ask the 5 who remember to bring the oil, hey, can we have some of your oil so that we can light our lamps? And the perplexing answer that we read is no, you can't. So what do we do with that? What do you make of that? I mean, if Jesus is supposed to be all about like sharing and selflessness, the parable seems kind of opposite of what you might think when you think of Jesus. And that's because, again, the parable is designed to invite us into a new way of thinking and seeing. And so what does it mean? Well, first of all, to understand the parable, you have to understand how a lamp worked. In ancient Israel, lamps were kind of clay lamps, and they burned from oil. You put the oil in, olive oil, and the flame comes out, it's like a regular kind of kerosene lamp. But he's talking about oil here, and you have to put it in the lamp. And so the oil burns. It's ignited. It is the substance that allows the fire to exist. And what the significance of the oil of the 5 wise bridesmaids is that they were diligent. They wanted to be prepared. They wanted to greet the bridegroom. And so they did everything they needed to do in order to prepare themselves. And so in that preparation is kind of the meat of what Jesus is getting at. You have the difference between people who prepare and care and people who might say they care but when it comes down to it, they haven't prepared. They haven't done anything at all to express their deep desire and longing. And so when the 5 unwise bridesmaids ask the 5 wise ones for oil for their lamps, it's not that they don't want to give it to them, they can't give it to them because it's a substance. It's a substance of the soul. And it only comes when you do diligence. The transformation only comes when you earnestly desire it and when you take action to allow that transformation to happen. So essentially what you're seeing in this parable is people who are saying, hey, I see that you have had this transformational experience and that you are now prepared. Can I have that too? And the response is, no, I can't give you transformation. I can't transform you. Your transformation has to come through your own earnest seeking along the path. So I hope that explains that one a little bit. It isn't about selfishness or selflessness. It is about inner transformation and doing diligence and not doing diligence. Nobody can transform it for you. You have to be the one who opens up your heart with your relationship with God to be transformed. So I want you to think about that today. I want you to think about that dynamic. And I'm going to put a little bit more structure to these parables as we go through them. But if you have any ideas or questions, leave me a comment below and I'll get to it and we'll discuss it. So I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in and I will see you tomorrow.